We all know that using competitions, sweepstakes, promotions are a great way to grow our customer database. Generally, we can make them really simple to enter, we can give away a prize and know that we'll be able to collect email addresses or we'll be able to increase our social media following really simply, really easily, and at little cost. Sometimes your competitions can even go viral, which is amazing. However, whilst we think they're simple and easy, I have discovered that quite often you're probably breaking the law when you're running these. And whilst you may think that running a simple like campaign or a little promotion to give away a gift card doesn't need any legal terms and conditions, the fact is you're probably breaking the law. And I know that they can seem like they could be an easy way to quickly boost customer engagement and to build your customer list. But I don't want you to get in trouble when you run these. So today I asked a lawyer to come on and talk to us about the things that we might need to be including when we run these kinds of promotions. Now, it doesn't matter if you're running them in store or online. Anthony's going to give you a bunch of tips to at least start you in the right direction to make sure that you are running a legal competition and that your customers and your business are going to benefit from it. Before we jump in, a great big thank you to The Retail Therapist for leaving a review of the podcast. And The Retail Therapist says, I have this on repeat, 5 stars. I've been listening to the Photography That Sells podcast with Lauren on my last 2 runs, and OMG, it is amazing with loads of exclamation marks. I need to listen again with a pen and paper to write everything down, but only last week I was feeling so super frustrated with all my photos and not knowing where to start on trying to convey my brand in a way my target audience would respond to. So many tips to help me get started. Thank you. Well, thank you, Retail Therapist, for leaving a review. And if you would love to leave a review and maybe be featured on the podcast, simply tap the review button in your podcast app. Now, this month, we are talking all about how you can grow your customer database, how you can grow your customer list. Scaling your retail business requires leveraging and focusing on what's working. If you want to move from a 6-figure business to a 7-figure business, or if you're already at 7 figures and you want to move to an 8-figure turnover and even beyond, you need to know what's working. So I've put together the Next Level Metrics Monitor for you. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but it is a simple cheat sheet on what you need to measure in order to scale your retail business and move to the next level. It's free. If you would like to grab it, head on over to selenaknight.com/metrics. And let me know what you're doing right now when you're listening to this podcast. Simply take a photo and tag The Selena Knight on Instagram or Facebook and let me know what you're doing right now and how this podcast is inspiring you. Okay, so let's jump in to this week's episode. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. Running your own business is fraught with danger. We all know that. And sometimes we don't have access to instant legal advice. So I'm here to help you, and I've brought Anthony Verna on the show. He's a lawyer, and he's going to help us really navigate what it takes, what you need to be doing, and how to make sure that you stay within the law when it comes to running a promotion. Anthony is the managing partner at Verna Law, a boutique law practice focusing on intellectual property, trademark and copyright registrations, protection, domain name law, advertising and promotions law, which is what we're talking about today. And he represents a huge range of businesses, right from businesses like yours up to senior executives and multinationals. So welcome to the show, Anthony.
Selena, thank you so much. And you know, I know it's a mouthful, but I could hear you say that all day.
Well, you've been doing this for a while, haven't you?
Yes. I've been practicing law now for 15 years, and all of it's been intellectual property and advertising law. So, yeah, 15 years is quite a long time now that I think about it.
And what changes have you seen? Because I was doing a podcast yesterday and we were talking about how different the world is now just from 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we didn't have data on our phones. Yet now we can literally say, hey, Google, turn the oven on. So what changes have you seen in the whole legal landscape with the internet and cross-border promotions and all these sorts of things? How has that affected what you do in business?
Well, I'd say that with cross-border promotions, I'd say not much because I think a lot of companies want to um, maybe keep the branding even between jurisdictions, but because sweepstakes and promotions rules are very, very jurisdictionally specific, and many countries and jurisdictions really are different cultures that they want to they really do want to keep the cultures country specific. But what we do see, of course, is uh, use in social media. I think mostly we also see a lot of misuse of social media. I'm sure, Selena, not just you, but a lot of the listeners can remember the times when it says just share this picture or click like for an entry to the sweepstakes, and I don't know any jurisdiction in which that's an actual legal entry. I do see a lot more of that going around than you ever used to, just because of the ease of being able to put something up on the internet and the mass communications going out quickly. So I do see a lot of that. But also you do see a lot of companies really trying hard to keep their branding, whether it's of their whether it's of their promotions or their products, as even as they can throughout the world. And that's I mean that can be a real problem because again, every country, every jurisdiction has its own culture, and so people may come to the same end result in the same, in just a different way. So that's something that a lot of companies really are trying hard to do today. And so they're doing a lot more legwork in the beginning to make sure that they can do that. But that's also true for sweepstakes as well. They want to at least keep some kind of semblance of a similar promotion, even though it's different in different jurisdictions. But they want to at least keep that semblance and that branding the same.
Okay, just so we're all on the same page through this conversation, you use the word promotion and you use the word sweepstakes. Can you give us a little bit of a definition of what the different types, maybe the top 3 or 4 types of promotions that you see being run and what they entail?
Sure. Any ability that a business has to um, get customers through the door, to get names on an online forum, any way of doing that is a promotion. So whether we're talking coupons, whether we're talking discounts, whether we're talking um, 10 coffees in your 11th is free, 10 dinners in your 11th is free, anything that gives the customer some kind of benefit is a promotion. So those promotions can be, discounts, some kind of loyalty program, and of course the sweepstakes, or the sweepstakes that or other contests, excuse me, that we're talking about. That's how I would define a promotion, and then there are different types of promotions. Um, so that's why I was using promotion or sweepstakes. Um, I'd say that the traditional kind of sweepstakes is still really strong, especially in retail. And when I say it's a traditional kind of sweepstakes, if you're in retail and you put a box out and you say, we're going to give the grand prize winner $1,000, all you have to do is fill out the form. That is still the strongest type of sweepstakes that can be that can be had. And the reason for that is, Selena, if you're a retail store owner, you're going to get people to come into your store because you're going to say, here's how you enter. And not only will somebody enter your store, people will also give you their names, their addresses, their email addresses, their phone numbers. And that means that as a retail owner, you can now keep promoting to that customer or potential customer. So that traditional type of sweepstakes where you just give away some kind of money or some kind of prize is still really strong. You see some companies getting a little more creative. I have one client that the best that I could say is that they're in the beauty industry, and part of their particular promotions um, do involve some kind of creativity. So they try to ask for user input on say on hot beauty bloggers, and maybe it's the beauty bloggers that will win a prize. So there are some different considerations there. But what's nice about a situation like that is the store owner can again get customers interacting with them on social media, and that's very important as well in today's world.
Okay, so one of the questions I have about the first type, the traditional sweepstake, put your
Sure.
details in here and you can win a prize. You said, and then the retail store owner can market to those people. But can we?
Well, again, I'm licensed New York and New Jersey, and so I don't know for anybody listening in Australia, I don't know the answer, but yes, you can. Now you'll have to, of course, state this in the rules of the promotion, and again, whatever type of promotion this is, you're going to have rules for it, and those rules are basically the contract between you, the retail owner. It's going to also be between you and the entrant, because that entrant may or may not be a customer. And by the way, it's also going to be between you and the jurisdiction in which you reside, because in the United States, we have 50 states. We have 50 states and the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico and other territories. And so that means we've got, 54 different ways of looking at sweepstakes. For example, in Pennsylvania, there are no sweepstakes statutes. It's just all judge-made rules. So anyway, yes, you can market to them, but how you're going to do that has to be in the rules for the sweepstakes. But I mean, yeah, there's nothing wrong with sending a flyer to somebody in the mail, and if somebody gives you their address for the right to have a chance at $1,000 or whatever it may be, boom, there you go, absolutely acceptable.
So do you see a lot of times when independent businesses are running these sorts of competitions, they've kind of glossed over the part where they have to make terms and conditions?
All the time.
Okay, I'm just thinking the same thing because as you said that, I know that you have to have terms and conditions, but I was just thinking so many of the promotions that we see, especially on social media, they never say click here to see the terms and conditions, which I'm sure is somewhere. Well, actually, no, I'm not sure at all. That's why we're having this conversation. So can you then just give us a quick overview of the sorts of things we should be covering in our terms and conditions?
Sure. So first off, if you're running some kind of contest or sweepstakes as the promotion, you really need to make sure, one, that you name it, and a lot of people are surprised about that. But you want to name it because it's special to you right now, and also you need to remember things like who's eligible. So everybody has to either be eligible or not eligible. And you have to basically state that this is an agreement to the official rules. The sweepstakes or contest has to have a period. So it's opened at a certain day. It closes by a certain day. You have to state how you enter the particular sweepstakes. It could be visiting, visiting a location. And when you visit the location, you have to fill out a form, and one form per visit, or one form per day, per household, whatever it might be. And then you also, in how to enter, you also have to state what, here, at least in the United States, you have to state what we call an alternative means of entry. And what that means is that if, say, it's too difficult for somebody to say, drive a car to your location, you still have to provide a mail-in kind of entry. Usually very,
No.
yes, yes,
No.
yes, you do. Yes. Alternative means of entry has to be done so that the really the philosophy behind it is that those who wish not to enter or wish not to make a purchase can just even avoid your particular location. So you provide a mail-in way for them to alternatively enter the sweepstakes. Now, by the way, you can make that alternative means a little difficult. Like it can be on a 3-inch by 5-inch postcard. You have to print your name, and no handwritten entries accepted, things like that. So you can make it a little difficult on the alternate means, but you do have to provide an alternate means because dropping something in the mail and with a little bit of postage, not all that difficult to do. Whereas actually going to a store for some people might be difficult. You have to discuss the odds. And here in the United States, half the states want your odds to be stated as 1 in a certain number of numbers, and the other half of the states are perfectly acceptable perfectly happy if you say the odds of winning depend on the number of eligible entries received. And so by the way, everybody's set of rules is invalid in half of the United States. Just by that particular problem alone. You also have to discuss things like winner selection, and notification. So that would certainly be something to think about. You have to discuss how the winner will be publicly acknowledged, because there are some states in the United States, like Tennessee, that require that you state that somebody has won your sweepstakes. And yes, there are lots of people out there who are going to call your corporate headquarters or whatever your main location is and say, who won the sweepstakes? Because they're really curious. And so you have to, make sure that that's a part of your rules. Some other things that you should think about are some of your limitations of liabilities. Obviously, you as a retail owner are not going to be responsible for alternative entries that are lost by the postal service. If you are running this online, obviously you're not going to be responsible for any kind of electricity problems or internet problems or things like that. If there's a dispute, you have to state the dispute. If this is being tied into something online, you should tie this into your company's privacy policy, because it is about how you do business. So there are, those are some of the things that I would say that you really do need to think about hard when you're drafting rules for sweepstakes or other promotion.
So then my next question is, we all see the promotions on social media. Like us and follow us to get an entry into winner such and such free. How are all these people getting away with it? And why is the social media platforms, Facebook is probably the biggest one because they own just about everything. Why do they not crack down on it?
Well, one, it's really not Facebook's realm to crack down on a contest or promotion that's not being run correctly, right? They're not the government entity. Two, I'd argue that a lot of companies that are running improper promotions are being cracked down. I would just say that it's maybe we're not aware of it. It's not something that really makes the it's not really something that makes the news. But there are fines out there for it. There are fines for deceptive, misleading advertisements. So it happens. I would say that also that a lot of companies do get away with it because it's not the top number one priority of state consumer advocacy. So when a state is looking at what is going on in its jurisdiction, this is probably not high on the list of fines, but I've certainly seen companies get fined for it.
Interesting.
One of the biggest times that I see a company getting fined for it isn't really the share a picture or like this on Facebook, even though that does violate the rules in every single U.S. state. One of the biggest ones I've seen is a Rhode Island rule, which is that if your sweepstakes is going to be valid in Rhode Island, then you as a retailer actually have to register the sweepstakes in Rhode Island. Now, it's not such a big deal. You fill out a form, you pay $50, and whether if it's one of my clients, I fill out that form, and then I just bill them for it. It's really not a lot of money to get it registered in Rhode Island. However, it's Rhode Island. So the other thing that I could just do is say void in Rhode Island, and now you don't have to worry about registering, and people are like, yeah, Rhode Island's the smallest state in the union. I could skip that.
And I know that we're talking a lot about the US here, and if the majority of the listeners of this podcast are in the US, but if you are in Australia, I'm going to be linking in the show notes to a podcast that Anthony did with an Australian barrister on this topic as well. So have a listen to this and grab a whole bunch of information from Anthony, but head on over to the show notes. And if you're in Australia, listen to the podcast that Anthony did with an Australian barrister, just to top up your knowledge a little bit more. So don't be freaking out if you're in another country, because the information that Anthony's giving you is, whilst the rules and regulations may change a little bit, take what he's saying, things like make sure you have terms and conditions. The big takeaways that he's giving us, take those and then do some more investigation on your own terms. But I have to say, I haven't run a competition for quite some time, and it can be quite difficult to draft those terms and conditions. I think I probably left out some of those things because often promotions are done on the spur of the moment. Like maybe a supplier will give you something, you weren't expecting it, so they say, hey, we'll give you an extra one to give away. So you just pop it up on your social media or on your website, be in the draw to win a free makeup brush because someone's given it to you. Can you generally reuse your conditions once you've drafted them?
I would say yes, depending upon what the promotion is. I've certainly have done that for clients where basically all we do is change 2016 to 2017 and make sure the dates are all line up correctly at that point. And we're rerunning the exact same promotion. There are some times when parts of maybe a promotion have not worked correctly, so you change them up. Some of that's a legal decision, some of that's a business decision.
Great to know. Now, I have another question. Having been the recipient of a prize once, doesn't happen very often, but once I did, it never turned up.
You realize that there are people who just like enter everything that they can find, and they wind up like living on what they're able to win because they enter everything.
I know, but what is with that? Like, I just can't see the point. I also can't see the point. This happens a lot at trade fairs, and this is just very pertinent because I was at a conference yesterday, and of course you put your card in to win this and you get scanned to win that. And I just can't see the point in entering if you don't want the prize. Like, it just seems like such a waste to be bombarded with advertising material. Yes, I understand you can opt out, but why waste everybody's time? That is a conversation for another podcast.
For another time.
But however, my conversation was a few years ago, I did win something. I think it was just a book or something like that. And it didn't turn up. So whose responsibility is it to ensure that the prize gets to the recipient?
Oh, it's the company that's running the promotion is absolutely. Now, by the way, there certainly can be conditions on collecting that particular prize. So again, this is where the rules of the road come into play. If somebody has to be present at the store to get it, you'd better say that. If somebody has to only use the prize in a certain radius, and I certainly had this where I certainly had this particular issue one time with the client because the client had a co-branding marketing deal for a little bit with a movie theater company, and that movie theater company, and they basically said, well, yeah, so we've got theaters here, 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 and here. So, anybody, like, if you were like in Nebraska and you were winning this, you could use it, you could get it, but boy, you're driving a long way for the ability to cash in on it. So, you can put these limitations in the United States, at least you can put these limitations in your rules, and that's perfectly acceptable.
That is, I think a lot of people don't ever think of that. And here in Australia, we just had a law change, which was with the use of gift cards. So if someone purchases a gift card, it now has to be valid for 3 years. However,
you guys are light. You guys are totally late. Now here, and it's actually started with New Jersey, because New Jersey bumped it up to like 6 or 7. Yeah. So, and then the Federal Trade Commission bumped it up a few years as well. So you guys are 3 years. Wow. That is the least restrictive Australian law I've ever heard of compared to an American law.
Used to only be 12 months, but it's carrying it on your balance sheet. That's a pain in the butt.
Yes, the breakage part. Yes, breakage is a big problem when you have to carry it that long. Yes.
So at the moment, that's only in certain states of Australia. I'm sure it will change in different states, but this is exempt if it's a customer loyalty card. So if it is as a result of a promotion, or it's spend $100 and you get $20 gift card, those you can set. You can make it 2 weeks if you want to. So I think one of the things just to be really aware of, you were saying with the radius that you can potentially use it, is also the time frame. And that just amazes me that someone can have a gift card for 10 years. Like, really? That just, you got to use it.
Yeah.
Let's just laugh. I thought 3 years, like, I don't know, 12 months. I can understand 12 months. We're sort of moving off the subject a little bit. I can understand 12 months if it's somewhere you don't go very often. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. But if it's somewhere that, like a spa maybe. But surely in 3 years, you've got to be able to get there. In 10 years, the value of that gift card is worth nothing. Can we just quickly talk about this? Just because the 10 years has got me flabbergasted.
I don't think it's 10. I have to double check that number. So
let's say it's 7 then. Let's say it's 7. That's still a very, very long time. If that gift card in New Jersey, say I've purchased a gift card not for a dollar value, but for a product or a service, and I think a spa, like a haircut. So one haircut, and I've paid my $100 for that, for my friend to go and get a haircut. If she doesn't redeem it for 5 years and that haircut is now worth $300, is it still valid for the one haircut, or is it still valid for the $70 or $100?
It's valid in the U.S. It's valid for the dollar amount.
Right.
And by the way, it's 5 years. Is
5 years?
5 years. Yes, which you have to admit, still a long time.
Still a long time. So so in the US it's a dollar value, but again, I guess you write this into your terms and conditions, don't you?
Always.
All right. Okay. All right. What else should we know? You have just been a wealth of information. I've got a whole page of notes here of things that people should be putting in their competitions. And I know that you're going to give us, we're going to link up to a advertising overview that you've got as well. So I think that's going to be very handy for people. But what are some other things that you see people and you just shake your head? You're just like, oh, this is like...
Well, the other thing that I mean, look, it's perfectly acceptable to say that you have to on Twitter put a certain phrase, tag a certain Twitter account, and then of course, if you're sophisticated enough, you collect those tweets and you dump them into your database, and this way you match up the fact that somebody put an entry in on the form as well as made the tweet, because then this way the tweet is there. What I would say is stuff like that to me it's not overly complex. I mean, I have a bachelor's in computer science and I'm a lawyer, so I've seen much more complex stuff. But I think for the consumer, I think for the consumer aspect of this, for the consumer, what's the word that I'm looking for? But I just think that that's very complex to say, fill out the form and then, and then tweet this particular phrase as well. And so that I think that's going a little out of fashion, because I just think it's too many steps for that.
I just have to jump in here and say, if you are
You're
running
allowed.
these kind of, I think they're called league parties. I don't buy into them, but in order to win, you have to go on because all these people are putting in prizes. You have to go on Business A's Facebook page and Instagram page and tag a friend. And you have to do this for every single business. And there's 12 businesses. It's just the only people who are going to win that is those competition junkies, because I don't necessarily want to follow all those people. And you just made me do 36 things, and I don't want to hassle all my friends by tagging them.
Yes, but I actually am looking at a set of rules that I wrote for a client, where they had to follow and tag a friend on Instagram at my client's Instagram account. So I have written those rules for sure.
But then it all comes down to efficacy, doesn't it? It's like, how many good quality entrants are you going to get when you're making people do all these things? You're literally going to get the competition junkies. But again, that is a conversation for another day. That's a marketing conversation. We're talking legal here.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, in my practice, in my IP and advertising practice, business and legal go hand in hand. So, if it doesn't make business sense, I tell my clients, why are you doing it? If it doesn't make business sense, why are you doing it? And in a situation like this, if they think they're going to get the people to do it, that's fine. But if there's a simpler way of doing it, I always say, what's the simpler way of doing it?
I love it.
And I a few years ago, my former partner and I wrote this set of rules that personally I didn't understand and completely objected to, because there was a drawing every day, and every day everybody who was entered in this promotion, well, first off, they had to do something, and that physical some activity was then entered, and then because they did that thing every day, they'd get like a red number and a blue number, and then of course, like a lottery, a red number would be chosen and a blue number would be chosen, but you would only win if you matched the red and the blue. And then there was
I'm
a weekly
exhausted just thinking
drawing.
about this.
Right, and then there's a weekly drawing of the red and the blue, and of course you only win if you match the red and the blue correctly. And right, so
They really didn't want to give away that prize.
And that's exactly correct. Completely, perfectly legal to set up a rule set where you just don't want to give the prize away. Perfectly, completely legal. But yeah, I mean, apparently, I don't know who would be participating in that, but I guess they said they had a lot of people participating in it.
Wow. Good luck to them is all I say.
They didn't not give away the grand prize. I will tell you that much.
They did or they didn't?
Did not.
They did not. Of course they did it.
They made it too hard. They made it too hard.
They made it too hard. And that's, at the end of the day, if nobody wins and people find out nobody won, the consumer sentiment that goes with that wasn't worth the effort.
I would say yeah. I would say if you're going to put together some kind of contest or sweepstakes, have a prize that you can stomach giving away. And this way, one, you're going to have people enter. Two, you can make a big deal about it in all of your marketing channels when that happens, when you give it away. And this way, you'll get customers or at least winners who appreciate that. If people are going through this and it's a slog to go through and nobody wins from a business standpoint, is that good for your brand? I don't really think so.
I don't think so either.
Yeah. I mean, so if you don't feel like giving away $5,000, well then don't. Give away a smaller amount. And
I'm 100% with you.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
And by the way, $5,000, not a number that I pull out randomly. $5,000 is a number that in New York and Florida requires bonding and insurance in case anything happens to the winners or to the contest. So, if you want to give away a smaller amount and save yourself extra paperwork and extra costs, because it's like it gets so much more expensive at the $5,000 mark. So, give away less money.
And that's really pertinent to those people we were just talking about earlier, where you might have 12 companies putting together and the total prize pool is more than $5,000. So that is a piece of gold right there. Thank you, Anthony. Because a lot of people are probably thinking it's the individual, but it's the whole total pool, isn't it?
It's the prize.
The prize, yeah.
So if you're giving away a $5,000 prize, then you would have to do the New York and Florida bonding and insurance. But if your grand prize is under that, then you don't.
That's interesting because I see a lot of those link parties where the prize value is well over $1,000. So that's very interesting to know. Thank you. We could talk about this for ages, but I think you've given us so much useful information that we don't want people's heads to explode. They can go off and look at your website, grab your advertising overview. If you are listening in Australia, click through and listen to Anthony's podcast with an Australian barrister. And where can they find you?
Sure. You can go to vernalaw.com, VERNALAW.com. And if you just want to send me an email, anthony@vernalaw.com works as well.
Great. And so if you are running these sorts of competitions on a regular basis, or if you're trying to get trademarks, Anthony is your guy. So if you're looking for those things, make sure you head over there and have a chat to him, send him an email. I'm sure he'd be more than happy to give you some advice and give you some prices on how you can get those things done. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Selena. It was a pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. You can find all of the show notes over at selenaknight.com. If you found something that you heard today particularly useful, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on iTunes or Stitcher. And of course, feel free to share this episode with someone that you think could benefit by listening to it. Want more retail biz strategies? You can watch the Bringing Business to Retail TV show, where each week I'll answer a question or provide you with a simple, actionable retail biz strategy that you can implement in your business right away. If you have a question or a guest, I'd love to hear from you. Drop my team an email at podcast@selenaknight.com, and I'll see you on the next episode. Have a great week.